had been a golden afternoon, and I remember having the familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the summer itself.
I guess we should give context, because this is business as usual for anybody watching. But it's not business as usual on our end.
No.
So I'll let you kind of guide us in maybe, and then we can
mostly because
discuss it more.
We have not just fallen a little bit out of the rhythm of regular weekly podcasts. I
was on vacation for a week. You were on vacation for a week. Thanksgiving, Christmas.
Right, yep.
And then we did sit down.
Yeah. At
one point, we were just kind of in a grumpy mood.
Well, really since before
Thanksgiving.
Well, yeah, and what happened with you, and not like alluding to some like you, like you.
No, yeah,
but
just
a family thing,
yeah.
And so it's been, whereas through the summer we were like bam, 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 like really hit it, and so. So sometimes just, for those watching and listening.
Funny because it feels like you and I, we haven't really skipped a beat.
No. Yeah. No.
And it is funny that we haven't sat down to formalize the process in a while.
Yeah.
And it's weird.
But, we always do we don't declare it a pre-show, but we hang out. I have a coffee. I show you 14 cameras I bought off of Facebook Marketplace.
That's the metric. In the summer, Matt would be like, hey, I'm thinking about buying this camera. I bought one camera. Literally one, and you're like, oh my God, look at this camera I bought. And then now it's I bought 13 new cameras.
Yeah. Literally on Monday, I went to a farm in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, after seeing a Facebook Marketplace posting, and I came out of there with 18 cameras for $150. That's maybe another discussion.
Yeah,
we were talking about that in the pre-show. How is what you're doing with buying all these cameras an externalization of your character?
Of your neurosis.
Of my neurosis. And there is some stuff behind that, I think, but and not to tease the audience with some therapy from
vague.
Me. Yeah. So I think whenever we do our pre-show, we're like, look, let's revisit the Millinote, but then let's also just talk about what we're going through. What have we listened to? What do we watch? You showed me some photography books. You mentioned the Rick Rubin podcast. What is it called again? I've listened to
Tetragrammaton.
Tetragrammaton, yeah.
Great podcast.
I've listened to numerous episodes. I went to Chicago for my grandma's 90th birthday, listened to it on the drive out and on the way back.
Yeah.
Just great stuff. And then saw Rick Rubin in the Tom Petty documentary on Amazon Prime. So he's been kind of a mainstay, obviously.
I think that's world. For at least the last 6 months. He's been a pretty since we read his book.
Yeah. Right. So we have a little process that we go through. Look at our Millinote, talk about how we're feeling, what we're going through, whatever. And Alex just sitting in the chair goes, "I'm nervous."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Okay, what's that about?"
Yeah.
And started unpacking a little bit, and wanted to get into that a little bit more with you. Because some of the things that we've seen with the podcast itself, and we don't want this episode to be talking about the podcast, but that's part of the nervousness, which would then, of course, goes into what we normally talk about, which is art, the work, life and creativity, all of that stuff. So, we've gained a few subscribers since we hit 50. Big milestone. We've gained some. We've got some good comments from people that we haven't seen before. And I might, you let me know if the other things are factoring in, but, I just want you to kind of unpack the nervous thing a little bit.
I mean, pretty much exactly how you laid it out, right? We're sitting here and we're talking about this idea of truth and this idea of being truthful in your work. And, obviously started talking about the podcast, and we just recently listened to this podcast episode, and,
which I haven't listened to yet, right?
Yeah, you haven't listened to yet.
Listened to it.
But basically, it was a Rick Rubin interview, and he was just talking about this idea. I think we've both just been traveling a lot, so that's great.
Yep.
Great. I mean, we were on the road for 25 hours last month, so it's a great podcast. But he talks about this concept of every time you approach a piece of work, you should approach it or a piece of personal work, not for a commercial
Yeah.
cause.
Client work, freelance
yeah,
work.
exactly. You should approach it like it's an entry in your diary.
Yeah.
And I love that because we've used that language on this show before. And we've talked about that concept a little bit before, but it just makes perfect sense to me as like, from like recording a moment in time, with the work is, for me, it works because it's just so much easier to revisit that
Yeah.
and not cringe
Yep.
at a future date. It's just so much more. And I think part of that is just how honest it is.
Yeah.
And so the point that he makes is that when you're doing a diary entry, there's no point in lying to yourself.
Right.
You're doing it
Yep.
for yourself.
Yeah. The diary is the one place you can tell the truth.
The diary is the entire thing is to tell the truth in the
Yeah.
diary, right? And then you can reflect on that truth and you can grow from it. And that's exactly what creating work is.
Yep.
Is, you're putting down your perception of a series of events or of something that's happened or that might happen or whatever. You're recording this and you're getting these thoughts down and then you're reflecting on it. And there's no point in lying.
Right.
You're the only person and I love that because I think that's how you should approach work. And so we're sitting here talking about this and it's going through my head so it's just all about honesty. And I'm like, well, if I'm being honest right now, I don't give a shit about talking about, this or that or these ideas on the Milanote. And I was like, I'm feeling this pressure to sit down and just record a podcast. I'm very nervous. Like we had a conversation, the pre-show, and this one felt a little more, there's just this anxiety there about oh, we're going to have to just at some point turn the cameras on
and
record,
put on a show. And I don't mean
I think,
talk about something
it's
that's
been
valuable.
so long since we've done it. Yeah. And, with every episode that you release, suddenly the expectation raises a little bit and you have to give some kind of value or whatever. And so I'm sitting over here just
starting to get nervous.
Yeah, it's getting nervous, crippling fear setting in. And it's really silly because, it's not like it's not like there's a lot of people or...
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things. And then Matt and I started talking through that a little bit. And I think we both face the same thing at times with creating work that's not, this show or whatever, where you do it a little bit, just enough to kind of set the expectation. And then suddenly there's an expectation. And this is absolutely a pattern with me where maybe it's a photo project.
Yeah.
And you'll start and you'll get 20% into it. 25% into it, whatever. And, it's enough. The proof of concept is there. It's going to work. You just have to keep going. But then you're far enough into it too, where you're I've been at this for a while. Anything I do now is just going to be uninteresting.
Right.
Or, I need to evolve. And then you overthink it. And then usually I just pull away from it. I try to go find an outlet somewhere else or whatever. And then I felt myself feeling that with this podcast. And what we ended up doing is, okay, let's just run with that. We'll sit down and press record. And that's where we're at right now.
And I'm curious with the nervousness too, not that, you know exactly what the nature of it is or what the sort, what things you're thinking about that inform the nervousness. It could just be general, we've got to make good work today with this podcast. And that just, the idea of that general umbrella thing makes me nervous versus, is anything that's happening with the podcast or adding, a few, we've, 15 subscribers in the last however many weeks, which is, pretty good for where we are. Are any of those things contributing to that nervous feeling, or is it literally just, oh shit, we gotta make some work today and tell the truth?
Yeah, no, I think it's just one, it's as soon as we hit 69 subscribers, we're going to have to stop making episodes forever. So that's done. Unfortunate.
Can you pause subscriptions? Is there a setting in YouTube where you can't
start kicking people out
just to keep it at that glorious number?
I think that
couldn't resist.
No, I think that it's just expectation. you create a sense of expectation.
Expectations they
On
have of you or us.
they have on, but I mean, it's also just expectations on myself, right?
Okay.
You know, we have to watch the episode before we put it up.
Right. Yep.
So we've seen the last 10 episodes. We've seen the, you know,
Yeah.
the next one that'll come out, you know, in the sequence. And it's like, we know what we've talked about, and we've seen all the titles, and like, we'll scroll through the page and see what we've talked about. And, you know, at a certain point, and we're getting there where I'm just being hypercritical, and I've created a level of expectation. And I think the anxiety is like, well, you have to live up to that expectation.
Right.
And the irony of that anxiety is that to live up to that expectation, I think what we need to do is just be honest when we're having conversations and not avoid things that, you know, that we're feeling.
Yep.
It's kind of like, you know, in a good relationship where communication is, you know, it has to be at the forefront. You just have to make sure that if you're feeling something, it might not be the most convenient to bring up or the most comfortable to bring up, but it's probably best in the long run. I think the same goes for creating work, or, you know, the crossroads we're at right now with this. I wouldn't even say we're at a crossroads. It's business as usual, but we took so much time off of recording that, you know, if you step away from something long enough, you give yourself time to think.
Yeah.
And typically time to think is not good for action.
Right. Exactly.
So I think the issue that I'm facing right now is we just had too much time to think, especially, you know, the last month or so has been time away from work. It's more interpersonal. It's, you know, less doing this. So you're literally just spending that time thinking about the things that matter most. And this is one of those things for me. And so, yeah, it's just sitting there and thinking about that constantly. Doubt starts to creep in about, you know, I don't know. And then that lack of action to counter the doubt.
And what's the doubt of, like, whether we can continue to make good work?
Are we going to run out of things to talk about? Is that going to, you know, it's getting back to that initial Rick Rubin thing of like the diary. It's like, we got to remember that we're not writing this for anybody else.
Yeah.
We're writing this for us. And that's the attitude that's going to get us, you know, if we do 50 episodes and we just continue to write it for us, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
If, you know, anybody is thinking like, oh, this one wasn't very useful.
Right.
It's like, if at the end of these episodes, we're feeling like, and we joke, it's like therapy.
Yeah.
If at the end of these episodes, we're feeling like we, you know, moved forward a little bit, it's a success for us. And we're choosing to record it. We're choosing to put it out there. So we're opening ourselves up to that scrutiny. And we're opening the ideas up because nobody owns ideas. You know, they are. So yeah, I'm happy to put those out there. But at the end of the day, like us sitting here in this process, I got to remember, like, this is just for us. That was the whole reason we started in the first place. And if I start, you know, bringing in these other expectations, then it's just going to hurt the quality of, you know, the benefit that we get from it. And I think you can apply that same principle or that same way of thinking to creating work.
Yeah.
Whether it be, you know, a photography project, a film, a script, you know, a business, whatever it is, you can apply that same way of thinking. I mean, maybe not as much with the business, but, you know, definitely personal projects. You can apply that. Like, this is for me. This isn't for anybody else, but other people are invited to partake in it.
Right. And I think my way of wording that is I wanted to participate in making the podcast that I want to hear. Like, what's the podcast that I would gravitate toward that would help me? We talked about all of Rick Rubin's stuff. It feels like I've found someone who speaks and talks about this in a way that I go, yes, like that's how I want to do it, or that's how I have done it, or that's how I've thought about doing it, but this has gotten in the way, that's gotten in the way. And then his guests, of course, some of them, you know, not all of them are, you know, aligned with what we do or our approach or whatever. But that's the thing. This is for us, but I sat there and went, I want to help. I want to be part of a podcast that would be something I would have at the top of my listen list when a new episode came out.
Yeah.
because, and maybe I haven't searched hard enough, but I just haven't found that content that is talking about the things that we're talking about. And that doesn't mean that there's not similar stuff out there. Again, it's just
I think it's just the way that we approach it is true to how we're feeling. Like, at least this has been the case so far. Is the way that we approach it is true to how we're feeling at that moment. And it's like,
well, it's very diary-esque. I mean, I feel like I'm writing an entry in my diary because other than like protecting some personal information or not saying what my address is, like I'm not holding back on how I feel about what I'm doing or what I'm going through.
Well, and I think that's like, I don't mind, obviously, you want to keep some of the personal, but a lot of the reason that people like to withhold things, it's either like insecurity or ego. It's like, I'm a big believer in just like open source as much as you can. Like all ideas should be open source. Like processes, for the most part, should be open source. Like it's just, I mean, it's like we're all playing the same game or whatever. It's like, why not, put it all out there, see who has the most creative approach to whatever is being done. And I think with the podcast, it's interesting because, we're just putting ideas and how we're feeling at the moment out there. And it might seem a little bit, I don't know, just self-indulgent.
Yeah.
But
well, we've talked about that.
Yeah.
Is this just masturbatory? Is it just us?
Yeah.
Like subjecting people to our own personal therapy session?
And I guess the answer to that, though, is like if they're not enjoying it, they can just hop off. Go somewhere else. Like that's fine. There's plenty of podcasts that have different formats. But it's just like, I think getting down and thinking about these ideas and talking through them, and by way of doing that, coming up with alternate, ways to express them or alternate pathways of doing something, that's been valuable to me.
Yeah.
And that's hopefully, if there's the old saying where like, if it's valuable to you, it's probably valuable to somebody else because we're all living a similar experience. So
I think so much of my life with my close friends, whether it's you, Cody, my buddy Nick in LA, my buddy Micah, those relationships, the foundation is that diary approach to our interactions. It's not like the first time, we hang out, it's like, all right, what are you working through? Alex, what are you working through, Matthew? But it bubbles up, we don't like, make it a point necessarily to talk about our shit, our baggage, like what we're going through. I was alluding to all this camera stuff that I'm doing, like certainly is indicative of something that's going on with me. That doesn't necessarily mean turmoil or drama or my marriage is falling apart or, anything like that. But it is an externalization of something internal that's going on. And so I sit there and go, you're feeling nervous. If we just pushed forward with this podcast without addressing that, you would talk about stuff, but there would be externalizations of that underlying nervousness, right?
Yeah.
You might fidget with something. You might drink extra water. You might not really sound like you're engaged in the topic because you're really working on something else underneath it all. And so why not just take that on
Work
full
on that,
steam?
yeah.
But then, of course, we're going to relate it to the work because the work is what's, the work is one of the big ingredients in what's causing it. So let me ask you real quick, are you still nervous right now?
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm like nervous, but I mean, it's definitely, I'm just, I think you said this, this sums it up. You said you're working on something else.
Yeah.
I'm working on it. Like I'm still figuring out how I feel about it.
Yeah.
And this is all, it always, especially this time of year, it's cold.
Yeah.
It's dreary. There's not, the sun hasn't really been out today.
No.
Like I was going to wake up and go work out this morning. I didn't.
Oh, I was too.
Because I was, but I
chose to
was,
chase a camera
I was
instead.
up late last night and like, regretted that. And then, so I'm just, I'm in a weird state.
I am. Yeah.
And it's part of it is the time of year and the season.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is just like, I don't want to just, I want to make sure that we kind of stay on topic But yeah, I mean, it's just, I'm working through it. And
I think you were,
the thing is like, we're already in it, like this is, is the episode.
Yeah.
And, it's just, I think it's one of those things where time is the only, like, sometimes you just get on things where you're working through something and you just have to work through it. And you can either, you said at the beginning, like, okay, we got to put on our performance. It's time to jump into podcast mode. And
let's get control of this thing.
Yeah. And I want to avoid ever, like, some people say this in a positive, like, oh, I can just turn it on.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't like being the person that can turn it on per se.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, you got to just like put on a brave face and go out there and do whatever needs to be done.
Right.
But at the same time, like, I think sometimes you just got to be like authentic to the human experience of what's happening and how that's affecting what you're working on, and if, things aren't just smooth sailing at all times for all people. Some people they are, and some people they probably are less. But no, I mean, I just, especially though, this nervousness and this like, okay, we're a little bit in, we're 10 episodes in, more than that recorded. And, we're starting to get a little bit of traction, not like crazy traction or anything, but yeah, there is an expectation now. And, expectations are just like, even if they're external or internal or a combination of both, I've never been good at dealing with expectations. Well, in the sense of they're kind of crippling to me. I mean, we, the same thing with the channel, that my other channel, it's like, I haven't made a video in a while. And, I mean, you obviously, that like there was one that was pretty close to going up and then something happened. But at the end of the day, that's kind of just an excuse. The biggest part of it is I just don't, I'm not interested. I set an expectation and I'm not interested in fulfilling that expectation anymore.
Ted. No,
like,
brother,
like you set,
right there
I set that expectation of like, oh, I'm making these essay videos and I'm doing this. And then it's like, I was making those because I was like, man, this is what I want to talk about and whatever. And then I found that, okay, there's other people talking about these and, they're doing a fine job and that's scratching that itch for me. And I'm like, I don't really want to talk about this. So then I can either go and make more, just kind of like autopilot, which maybe would have been the better move, or I, my alternative was just like, oh, just never make videos.
I'm just done.
I'm done. And
walking away.
Because I set that expectation though, and then that expectation didn't interest me anymore. So I think that's what I'm interested right now is like, where does this podcast go? Like, what does this look like 5 months from now? Once we've navigated through that, because, a new wave of energy is going to hit both of us in April.
Yep.
I would say.
Yeah, spring.
Just
all
the
that.
season. Yeah. A new wave of energy.
We're getting out and taking pictures.
We're
more.
trying to, get together with some people in town and like work on some projects right now. Like if those succeed, there's going to be a new wave of energy that comes with that. There's going to be creative energy that we're not feeling right now. And so, I want all of that to channel into what we're talking about. Because this is a diary entry. This is something that we can look back on and we can watch the clips. And I want to be true to that. But at the same time, I don't want to like stop making podcast episodes because I'm feeling a little hesitant, because that's what I have done in the past on certain things is I've just dropped it.
Do you think you've dropped it because, I mean, I don't know if it's the case each time, but you've mentioned in our conversations about this podcast, especially that, you feel really good about the work that we're doing. Like you are, happy with how it's going. And I don't mean just like metrics and subscribers and all that, but like, we watch back the podcast when we edit it and put it together and all that. And you're not like cringing or, having whatever,
exactly.
Right? And I don't know how used to that feeling either you are, we are, I am, and what role does, being proud of your work play in sabotaging it or just choosing like, well, gosh, now like expectations are getting beyond what I initially had, which was we were just going to sit down and talk about this. There was sort of low stakes, whatever.
Well,
like,
so it's interesting because I think like what you were just getting at there is like almost a side effect of being true and honest to the moment is that we're humans and what we're interested in is going to change.
Oh, buddy, don't I know it?
What we do with our, just everything, the energy that is around us is going to change. The circumstances are going to change. All of that is in a constant state of change.
Yeah.
And by being so true to the moment, when you're putting something together, maybe, and I'm not sure if this is true, this is just something I'm just kind of thinking about, but maybe that sabotages, like, we've built this thing and it was 10 episodes on a particular feeling.
Yeah.
Both of us had a particular stage of energy that we were in at that point. And now we took a little time away and we went from like kind of moving away from that to like a brand new mode of existence in a way where it's like the things we're interested in have shifted and then reshifted. It's like we're completely like a full sea change away from that original.
And we've kind of, I don't want to say solved, but we've sort of like figured out some stuff through the 10 episodes, right? Like you kind of like, I kind of feel like I've got a better understanding of art and commerce. I've got a better understanding of,
this isn't to say we've like figured out art and commerce.
No, but you're just not in as much turmoil or you're
right. You figure out a way to exist with it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like a lot of my like just modality as a human has evolved over the last 6 months.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it is like when you create something and then you look at it and you build your expectations off of that, then you're like, I'm not really interested in that anymore.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, we're still interested in creating work. Obviously, we're still interested in like the conflicts of art and commerce and things like that. But, there are certain things that we feel really strongly about at one point in time. And then over time that changes. And that's, that to me is always the hallmark of great work is that you can go back and smile at it and take something away from it. Not that you're taking away answers, but you're taking something away from it even after time has passed and you've moved through zones. And I'm not saying that that isn't how I feel when I go back and I watch those episodes, but it is just like now, we've done this. Now we're staring into this great wilderness.
Yeah. And
we're like, where do we go next?
Right.
And I think that's part of the fear. And that's part of my fear on a lot of projects. And, it's got to be something that I'm interested in.
Yep.
Or else, it's like, I'm not interested in making video essays about something. I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
Like I've got so many things vying for my time. It's like, I'm not going to sit and do something a quarter of a way because I've built an expectation for myself. I think.
Yeah. Cause what I was curious was, do you ever find yourself like, oh, that I think I see a YouTube video there, or I see a photo project there.
Yeah.
And then you do something to talk yourself out of it.
Yeah.
Because, well, future Alex is going to think this is bullshit, or there's 6 other people already kind of did a video on this photographer. So
I think I get super excited, but like with the videos and stuff, like all of the videos I made, like I did the essay on Saw Lighter, then I did the Eggleston thing, and that was like more documentary.
Yeah.
And that was the progression. And I was like, okay, I did this way, and then I saw it this way, and I was like, okay, this was cool. But now I'm just like the next version that I saw in my head was like, I want to go out and just like create a documentary.
Yeah.
Like actually, not just grab clips.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I've been working on. Like that's where I want to do. That's the next evolution of that work. And so, I'm not interested at all in like digging through archives of somebody who, 50,000 other people have made a video about. I want to go find somebody and just like learn about their, I want something more obscure. There's this documentary that I watched last year, and then I've rewatched it a couple of times, and it's I think it's Encounters at the End of Encounters at the End of the World or Encounters at the End of the Earth.
Familiar, yeah.
It's Werner Herzog.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it was like 2007, 2008 or something, but he went to Alaska.
Yeah.
It's just this really bizarre documentary. And he's just like talking to these just outcast people who have gone and like found this solitude in Alaska living, and all of their idiosyncrasies are just accepted in this like bizarre, cold daylight for 3 months straight place. And it's just so beautiful. And I'm like, oh, I mean, I thought it was just an unbelievable documentary. And I'm like, and I'm sure, you know, it's fine. Like it's the greatest thing ever. I'm sure plenty of people will like it. Plenty of people won't, but it really moved me.
Yeah.
And then I watched this Louis Malle documentary in November, and he went to like, where was it? It was, but basically he went to this farm town at the beginning of the Reagan presidency, and he explored, like you just met all these people, and then like you had trickle down and like the rise of industry, and you take away these regulations, and then that really like hammered these like farmers, right? I mean, we've heard about it here. Yeah, you work on any ag jobs, all you hear about is how like nobody can make any money unless they're the biggest of the big. Yep. But he just followed these people, and he just inserted himself into this community. And Louis Malle's, you know, French. He's going to this like rural American, you know, town, and it moved me so much. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. Yeah. And then, I mean, I've just been watching some of these like, you know, some of the like Channel 5 documentaries that I've sent you, the little videos or whatever. Not necessarily like documentary in the sense, but just super interesting. Just talking to people, and I'm like, that's the itch I want to scratch. That's what I'm interested in. I just went way off the rails. No, this is great. But you know, that's what I want. Like, that's the itch that is sitting there, and it's saying, hey, you're not allowed to focus on anything else. Like, focus on this. And, you know, I haven't been able to put time into anything else, but I haven't, at the same time, I haven't found that thing that's like, this is what you're going to explore. Right. Like, and you know, it's just go out and pick something, sure, but it needs to, there will be something that grabs me, and I'm like, oh, I've got to dive deeper. And then you start unpeeling the layers, but there hasn't been yet. But yeah, I mean, that's a long way of saying my interest went away from making these like video essays. Right. And it's really hard to just sit down and be like, I'm going to make it just for the YouTube subscribers, you know, because of what's I neurotically check the YouTube subscribers like once every couple of days. I'm like, oh,
and a common thing we've talked about is doing what's expected of you versus what is, you know, your truth is what's true to you. You know, part of my early screenwriting was, I'm going to harvest these very personal things and experiences I have, but I'm ultimately going to write these stories with an eye on commercial viability and what kind of commerce I can drum up by taking something that's really personal to me and putting it into some silos of the midpoint crisis and the save the cat, you know, paradigm. So I make sure that
when's the inciting incident?
When a producer reaches it after it goes out, that they're not going, oh, well, you know, this is interesting and whatever, but this is like some art movie, not something I can sell at a, you know, to customers.
Well, that's been kicking me a lot lately too, is like, you know, there's a couple of projects that I want to move forward on. And I don't know if this might just be ego talking, or I don't know what this is, but you know, we've been doing this together for a long time, and like both of us have been, you know, writing things and doing things for a long time, and I think we're pretty self-reflective about the process and things like that. Yeah. And yeah, I've gone back and I've looked at some of these projects that I've written or whatever, and everything I've written in the past, like before, I'd say the last couple of years, you know, it definitely, like I'd write something, I'd be excited about it, and then I'd get feedback on it, and like some of it is just not good.
Absolutely.
Like that's just but you know, first of all, most things are just not good at first. They require
most things we make
incubation. most everything,
Yeah.
right? You know, nobody, the idea of the genius who steps down
Yeah.
and just immediately just grabs everything they touch is just, that's a narrative. That's an illusion. It's pure propaganda.
Yeah.
But you know, I would ask for feedback on these things, and then you get feedback from people or from whatever, and it's like they're just repeating what some hack professor told them.
Yep.
That or like some YouTube video or whatever.
It usually goes through a set of rules.
Yeah, exactly. And
because that's the easiest.
That's fine.
That's the easiest thing to learn,
but
and it's the thing that we can point to.
Exactly. And I'm like, I just want to, you know, dial in on what's interesting to me.
Yeah.
And like, why is it interesting? Maybe I can answer that. Maybe I can't. But if it's interesting, it needs to go into the piece.
Yep.
And like, you know, people can critique it or whatever, but when I'm writing the piece, I'm writing the diary entry.
Yeah, that's right.
And I need to make that, you know, true. And, you know, yeah, you can just edit something to death. And now if I read something and I don't think it's interesting for a particular reason, might tell the person, I don't think this is very interesting.
Yeah.
But that's not like an attack on their credibility or whatever. It's just, I don't think it's interesting.
Right.
That's not saying change this. That's me saying,
I don't
think it's interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe you should re-examine and make sure you think it's interesting.
Right.
And if you think it's interesting and I don't think it's interesting, your say outweighs my say. But if you reread it and don't think it's interesting, maybe you could consider looking somewhere else. And I think like that's that feedback. And so that's, you know, that's what I'm just with the work that, you know, like I said, I've been working through a couple of like short stories that I wrote and trying to turn them into like a more filmic thing. And we'll talk more about that in the next couple of weeks, I'm sure. But it's looking at like what is interesting about this, and like if this is interesting to you, then like who gives a shit if it fits perfectly into some textbook framework? Because it's like, you know, the perspective is why are you making this?
Yeah.
And if the answer is not just because of some compulsion to make this thing, then that's probably the wrong answer, you know? So I don't know. I feel like I'm just rambling on this.
No, you're not rambling at all.
We need to get into something better.
No, I think this is great. This is all connected back to this idea of telling the truth or lying. And I think it manifests in different places in different ways. And, you know, when I examine all the stuff I've done my entire life.
Well, so you talked about acting.
That.
Like you felt like, I thought that was interesting. That was an interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
like acting is lying.
Yeah,
but I would argue, even though the best actors are
telling the truth.
Yeah, they're themselves, right? Like, like, or like I don't know. What's something I've watched recently? Like Jimmy Stewart plays the same character.
Yeah,
in every movie.
Yeah.
But he's one of the best actors we've ever had.
Yeah.
And, you know, Jimmy Stewart is just Jimmy Stewart, but like he's so honest with the material.
Right.
In most cases. We watched It's a Wonderful Life.
I did not watch it this season.
As did most Americans. You didn't watch it?
I did not watch
Bastard.
it. I know.
So we watched that. I don't know why that was top of mind, but yeah.
It's so good. I think I was afraid to watch it. I don't know.
I'll tell you
I've been, and I'm not. We're not going to go down this place, but I've just been in like leading up to taking Christmas break and all that. It just was like vibrating with anxiety and just stuff like trying to let go of work brain to transition into Christmas break brain. It was incredibly difficult this year.
Yeah.
We can talk about that another time, but you know, but I always try to sit there and go like, you know, don't lie to yourself about what you're going through. You know, be in this. If you're compelled to go in this direction with buying cameras or doing this, you know, within reason, you know, just kind of see this through. Like you need to see these things through to kind of know whether or not you want to go farther with it or you want to, you know, cap it off and call it good. And I think that's kind of what you're doing, right? You're not going to lie to yourself and do what's expected of you and go throw out the content that's expected of you on your channel. And I think it's actually, you're doing yourself a good service if that's your truth, is like, when I have the video that I see in my mind that I want to make for this channel, I will make it. But until I feel that way, I'm not going to, especially if you're not feeling that, but then talking yourself out of it. Yeah. Because, well, future Alex might not like it, or this is too weird for my channel to go in that direction, or whatever it is, right? So to me, as long as you're not lying about why you're not making a video, I think I actually commend you for being in that state, because I think a lot of people that would have invested that much work into it and gotten to where you are monetized and all that, they would let bullshit start making them make stuff that's bullshit.
That's where I think that's part of where that anxiety sets in, though, is like, there's always this. I was talking to Audrey about this the other day, where it's like, some people are wired where they have to have maybe most people, if we're being honest. It gets into the lottery discussions that we had about people buying lottery tickets. Yeah. But whether it's like me checking an investment account, or whether it's me checking YouTube subscribers, it's like this little thing on the horizon that's like, maybe you're, the things that you're just miserable about in life right now don't have, like, there's just this slip, like, look at this though, like, anything could happen here, and you could just be perfectly set.
Yeah.
So it's like keeping this, just like, that sounds so depressing, but this like light at the end of the tunnel while you're just in this tunnel constantly. And, by not feeding into it, it's almost like you're letting that fire, that fear is like, oh man, well, I put all this work into it.
Yeah.
Like, it was this light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, yeah, but maybe that's not the right light to, like, a bad metaphor, but tunnels are straight. There's only one light.
But I think I really identify with this thought, especially the diary thought, because now it just kind of dawned on me this morning. I, felt I'm sort of in like this state of transitioning back into making videos on my main channel, my Final Cut Pro, filmmaking, all that channel. And there's a little bit of pressure. Like, it's the first of the year. You haven't had a video in 3 or 4 weeks. You're back from break. Yes, you have some other stuff going with this podcast and then my photography work and that channel and all that. But, you've got an audience. There's, getting close to 30,000 subs. They're, maybe some of them are ready for some Final Cut tutorials or some live stream about what's going on with Final Cut and editing and all that stuff.
It's funny. It is funny. Like, this is the first time that I've heard you talk about the Final Cut channel, and I've just felt like, oh, that's Matt's like corporate-y commercial.
Yeah.
Like,
it's my job.
Yeah, but it's funny how like that was the main thing at the beginning.
Yeah.
And now it's like I've almost separated that half of you.
Yeah.
And like that's like and I don't know why that is. It's just an observation that I just had in the moment.
And I think it's because of this. I mean, we're spending so much time in this world in our lives, because for a while, when we came together, we talked about YouTube in general, and it was always related back to, my Final Cut and filmmaking channel, Apple Tech and all that stuff. And now this has crept up, as I have pursued photography more and gone out and done stuff and made work and made a separate channel. Like, yeah, you're going to start seeing that version of me, or that dominant part of what's going on in my life. Now, the thing is with that channel, I still feel when I make a video, a true desire to make that video.
Right.
Like, if I was sitting there going, oh, I got all these subscribers, I got revenue, I've got to do this, I got to do what's expected of me, like I need to blah, blah, blah. I don't really want to do this. But there's definitely been times where I'm like, I don't really want to live stream today, so this Friday, so I'm just not going to.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot going on. There's not a lot I want to talk about. It's just kind of business as usual. So, I am in that state of, until I like have something I want to say or want to show people or want to teach them or whatever, I'm not going to just make a video to make a video. And I have so many ideas for videos that I'm excited. You know, I just have a stockpile that is accessible, like our Millinote, and I can go, oh yeah, that's right. I thought about that 2 months ago. That's totally cool. I want to do it. So I'm always very grateful of that, and I never feel like it's work or bullshit or I'm lying.
Well, and that's like an honest representation of like that part of your, you know, like I said, we can have like multiple interests that
absolutely,
you know, and that is just
absolutely, yeah.
It's like me going off on a tangent last year, just buying a bunch of like darkroom equipment.
Yeah,
right. Like that's something that's super interesting.
Yep.
And you can.
Just flashed in my head, but Willem Verbeek doing a car channel.
Yeah,
He's got this car channel that's going crazy. He does it great. I love his videos on the car stuff, and I really like car stuff. And who knows, maybe in 10 years, I'm buying old Volvos and fixing them up. So going back to the diary thing. So this morning, I'm like, I need to reach out to my audience. I haven't gone on my Discord server. I've been kind of MIA, and like that's okay. I was on break with my family. Like I don't need to.
I feel like I go MIA like once a month, and everybody just loses their mind, and I'm like, I'm still alive. Like it's been a couple of weeks. Like
so, you know, I just wanted to update the community and just kind of let them know what's going on. So I kind of just wrote this diary entry, honestly, when I think about it. And I just kind of laid out like, hey, just an update with what's going on. You know, here's what I have on my plate. I've got taxes I've got to get together. I've got, this whole camera thing that I'm pursuing to try to create a foundation for this, you know, kind of an e-commerce thing through my YouTube channel, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of just laid it all out in this huge community post on my channel. Several people read the whole thing and, you know, gave, you know, some encouraging comments and all that. And it wasn't like, oh, I got to do all this stuff. It was just like, hey, this is what's going on. And so I'm, you know, being truthful to myself by saying, you know what, this stuff's my priority right now. I need to like clear the decks of all this other stuff before I can be sort of open and free again to start channeling the Final Cut stuff and creating the content there that, you know, I want to be making. So,
so this raises a question with me, and I don't want to cut you off.
No,
but
you're good.
Do you think it's better to manage expectations or to ignore expectations? Because I think I was my approach is kind of like, oh, expectations. Expectations are not a bad thing, you know, especially internal, like expectations that you have of yourself. Like, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But you know, you making this diary entry, this community post, that's effectively you're managing
100%
expectations.
And I am an over communicator.
Yeah.
I don't do well with brevity.
Yeah.
I did edit my brain dump, so I did do some
cleaned it up a little.
Cleaned it up and tightened it up. I'm like, I don't need to say all that. That's redundant. Because I just flow. It's a stream of consciousness, whatever. And I, you know, didn't just send it. I, you know, double checked it, kind of reworked it a little bit, made sure, you know, it's long as shit. And I'm like, this is what I have to say. I'm not going to sit here and go, well, a YouTube community post really shouldn't be more than 2,000 characters. I don't care. And when you said managing expectations, the first thing I thought of is my kids.
Yeah. Got to manage
expectations with my wife. One of the biggest things I've learned about for my wife and I effective parenting with our kids is managing expectations. And I am doing it constantly.
Yeah.
All right, kids. So this is what it's going to look like when we get to the store. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. Da-da-da. Like the amount of ease I have in doing things with my kids and living our daily lives with managing our expectations is doing that has reduced friction immensely. And this was not like day one where like, we read the book, we know you need to manage expectations, so let's start doing this, honey. I learned the hard way through tons of relationship conflict. I just learned, well, if I kind of tell someone what's coming down the pike, they are not going to be as up in arms when that thing happens, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, whatever. And so I just really saw the effectiveness of it, and the results that it got. And I really try to do that with, you know, the community that I've developed on YouTube to try to let people know, like, hey, this is what's going on. You know, I might not share every last detail of whether it's personal or whatever, but if I know I'm going to go on a clip where there's not going to be a new video for a couple weeks, or I'm going to be a little absent on social media, whatever, you know, I'll let people know.
Yeah. See, and I think that's almost an area that I could use work in, because, I mean, I don't know why, but I do have like a combative approach to expectations.
I could see that.
Like, I'm a little bit more, like you told me a couple of years ago where like you would text me.
Yeah.
And you like, I wouldn't, I mean, I'm notoriously notoriously terrible at,
Right.
it, like
Responding in a timely manner.
And I mean, it's just all over the place, but like in my head, it's like this super negative, just like, no, fuck you. That's my time.
Yep.
Like not to you.
No.
But just like, no, that's my time. Like,
Yeah.
How dare you?
Right.
Come in and like take my time. Like, I don't know. It's just there's just this consciousness of it.
I think
I don't know why that is, but like,
I think there's an intensity with you of focus, and there's an intensity of whatever you're doing, working on, thinking about, whether it's a work thing or the work.
Yeah.
I think that outside stuff that creates an obligation, like gives you work, like now I've got to reply to this. Like you just put something on my plate.
Yeah. You just took away my
and it blipped my focus, or it completely ripped me out, or whatever. And for you,
it's very frustrating. And I mean, that's just a negative association that I've built over time, but it's very frustrating to be.
Yep. It's
I mean, it's like, it's borderline offensive. Like
to me, it's the scene in The Shining.
Goofy. It's goofy, right? And I mean, I don't want to be like Jack, where I'm like murder him.
No, but he's like, whatever the fuck you see me doing, what
No, it's just, it is borderline offensive, and expectations. Yeah. Expectation is the embodiment of that.
Yep.
Right. It is. I expect this, and like I'm like, in my head, part of it's just like, I have expectations for myself, and like those are the only expectations that matter. And it's a very selfish and potentially toxic way to be. Like I'm the first one to admit that. And look, this is probably something I need to work out with like a therapist or something. Yeah. But
I worked it out through failed relationships.
Yeah. Like, well, see, and like that, it's never really.
I'm not saying like you're going to head that way.
That's never been a problem, because I think what you get to is like, I mean, you just said it. You just pegged me. It's like, whatever I'm doing, whether that be watching a movie with Audrey, or eating dinner, or having a conversation with you.
You're like all in that.
No, exactly. I'm not multitasking. I mean, I think you can attest. Like we've spent hundreds of hours, probably 1,000+ hours talking in conversation, and it's like, if I get pulled on like a phone call, I'm just like, like it breaks my brain. I'm just like, I don't know what to like. I love to just be plugged, like singular in.
And I've seen you get fired up about something, a conversation that's focused and, engaging, and then an idea comes up of something, and I've seen the level of emotion and focus that you develop. And so that's why I can sort of see that if there's an intrusion on that, whether it's a knock at the door, a phone call, a text message, an email, whatever, like you just nuked my experience of this focus, of this thing, of this dance, of this romance, of this whatever, like, and I think that, like all of our personality traits, they're a double-edged sword. It's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
And we just have to deploy self-awareness and go, how is this my superpower? And how is it something that is my Achilles heel? And how do I try to navigate
the line?
So that I don't leave scorched earth in my wake. That my ego or my focus, my loyalty to that, to that thing is so great that I will just, leave scorched earth in my wake.
Do you think?
Because I did.
Yeah. Do you think
it's not the same thing?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
But it was, for me, it was.
Do you mind like going
no,
into? Yeah,
I mean, it's hard to. It's
because I think you and I have similar tendencies in like
Yeah.
that the control aspect, and it's. I mean,
I think, especially when it comes to relationships, for some of mine, especially some of the two relationships in particular, I feel like it was just
studio
like,
sessions.
I know I'm right.
Yeah.
And not like in an argument, sort of like every decision I make, you should trust me that it's the right decision.
Yeah.
Whether I do this thing that hurt your feelings
Yeah.
or did that thing, I wanted to do it and my intentions are
My
good.
intention was perfect.
And it's
yeah.
it's your shit that you're upset about it,
Yeah.
not me.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, I'm very much that way too, where it's like, I am right. And it is learning that dance with ideas.
Yep.
Where it's like, you might be right, and somebody else is also completely right. And it's this.
The expression that got me was when someone said, and I can't remember if it was in a movie or whatever, but they said, they paved the road to hell with good intentions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, that's a great, because I heard something similar, like maybe I was reading, I forget where it was. I forget the source, but essentially, it was like everybody who's done something atrocious throughout history probably had good intentions.
They were the hero of their own story, my
Absolutely.
friend. Trust me.
And no, it's so you get that controlling and dominant personality that like I have to insert. And I think learning to deal with that leads to better work.
It had been a golden afternoon, and I remember having the familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the summer.